Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The race is on for mayor of Salisbury, and one of the three candidates is Jermichael Mitchell. He will be facing off against Councilmember Megan Outen and local business owner and property manager Brad Taylor. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Mitchell has spent his time working with a number of nonprofits and The race is on for mayor of Salisbury, and one of the three candidates is Jermichael Mitchell. He will be facing off against Councilmember Megan Outen and local business owner and property manager Brad Taylor. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Mitchell has spent his time working with a number of nonprofits in Maryland and spent 2.5 years as a youth development specialist with the city of Salisbury that was created by former Mayor Jake Day. And we have him in the studio this afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, sir.
So, first of all, why did you decide to run?
We actually were going to run for city council, but when Jake Day moved on with Governor Westmore, we felt like the opportunity presented itself. Working for the city for 2 years, we've seen a lot of holes in things that we feel could be better. So we decided to get involved and try to make our city better than what it is already.
So in one interview, you talk obviously about your experience as a youth development specialist, interacting with lots of people and departments and communities. But being mayor means running a large organization. One of the questions obviously is what kind of experience you have in running a large organization. I asked actually the same question to Megan Outen. Because this is a large bureaucracy beyond just simply things you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. My experience in those 2 years, seeing what was going on, is actually more or less the mayor's the face. You work with competent people, so our city execs actually run the city. Those 2 years being in those meetings, seeing the things that go on, sitting down with the city council and persuading people to move towards what your game plan and the vision plan for Salisbury is usually what the mayor does. My experience is I've organized since I was 17. I'm 39 now. I've been in this community with several nonprofits, involved with the budgets, involved with the planning for sustainability. These weren't nonprofits that came about and then they were gone. These are things that are still around 20-some years later and still doing work in our community. So that's my experience when it comes to running things. I'm a great leader. We've had very, very much success with all of the things that we've ever been involved with, and we continue to grow.
Now, the city, of course, is made up of all kinds of various different interests, oftentimes competing. How do you resolve those interests? How do you move forward, particularly with all of those moving parts?
You move forward, again, working with competence. That's the biggest piece. I believe in the people that we hire to do their jobs, if that makes sense, and be a great leader and motivate them to do well. So making sure that we find the areas that we're wasting money, making sure that we find talk to the people to make sure that they're interested in the things that we're doing, not just doing things because we feel they're good. Making sure that the people are interested in those things. But you make sure that you're speaking with people, you're working with competent people, and not just your friends. That's one of the biggest pieces that we saw in the 2 years that we were there. Putting people in place just because they're friends, not because of competency, not because of experience. If someone's working in that field or that office for 20 to 30 years, that's the person that should be promoted to director, not someone who comes in who has no experience, and then that person that's been working there for that amount of time has to train that new person, right? That's a slap in the face almost. Are we not preparing our employees to be leadership, to be management? Those were some of the things that we saw that we feel like working with competent people, not just friendship, but bringing people in who we know the job and make sure they're doing it well.
So are you saying that during your time working with the city, you saw people who were being hired because they were friends?
Of course.
And can you give me an instance? Or
I would say in our department, honestly speaking, I seen a guy who came from managing a tool department store, and he came in and he was the director of housing and community development. They had someone who had been working there for at least 25, 30 years that could have been advanced to the director. And it happens in all the departments. It's not just the housing and community development. It happens in the field ops. It happens in other areas where people are overlooked. And you bring in people who are fresh and new. We can talk about it and be honest. It just happened, actually. You figure housing and community development lost their director. Muir Boda steps down from city council. His experience hasn't been housing and community development. He gets the job as the director of housing and community development. Not saying Muir can't do a good job. He's been a leader. He has leadership qualities. But his experience, right? You can't tell me there's not been a person that was already working in that department for several years who has been there doing the work, knows the work, that couldn't have been promoted to director.
So in terms, by the way, of experience of running a department, as it were, I mean, could not the same argument then be made against you? I mean, that is that there's somebody who has not necessarily come up through ranks. In the case of Mirabota, for example, obviously he's been on the city council for a long time, been involved. Megan Outen has obviously been on the council for a while, but she has maybe less experience.
Correct.
But nonetheless, being promoted from below, it just seems like that could be. And
it could be said about a lot, but Jake Day did the same, right? He wasn't there. He came in, he became city council president, moved on up, became the mayor. It's about experience. It's about people that are interested in learning, right? It's a learning process. A lot of times we think politics is politics is the experience, right? Our job is to get in and better the government. Our job is to get in and listen to the people and try to be the voice of the people. But the political part is just the experience of it all, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whatever it is. Politics is the experience. The job of the person getting involved is to make change. So as we grow, as you grow, you learn more and you become better at what you do. But by working with competence, that's the biggest piece, right? Finding the right people who have the experience and making sure that they're there to do the job.
So how do you find it? How do you weigh the difference between, say, bringing somebody in to create the experience, the change, as it were, that you want, as opposed to, say, somebody who might have come up to the ranks who may not be necessarily liking the idea of change? There's that balance there, I guess.
Yeah, there's that balance. But I think with the complaints and the things that we've seen in the city that are spent out with the taxes, with the bike lanes, the parking downtown, the selling of lots when people could be utilizing those lots for farmer markets, there's tons of complaints that people have. This isn't a thing where we were egotistical with this. This has actually been a thing for a long time that we've talked about that our community has wanted. So this is one of the other reasons that we're running for true representation. Our city has grown as of the last census, man. Numbers are astronomical now in the city of Salisbury. And I would say when you go down to the city of Salisbury to different buildings, it's not true representation. It doesn't reflect truly of our city. We need to hire people who look like other people. That way you don't have that language barrier, right? Someone comes into your department, they speak Creole, they speak Spanish. You should have someone in your department who can help with that language barrier. Now you're meeting needs, now you're getting things done. So again, change can be good. It's all about experience, right? So again, if that change that you're hearing or that someone is speaking about that's a candidate doesn't fit your life, that's cool. That's the person that you don't vote for. But you still have to use your voice. You still have to use your power of voting. No matter who it is that you vote for, you still got to go vote. That's the biggest piece.
So it sounds like in some ways you're a critic of the former mayor, Jake Day, in terms of what his vision was. So I guess there's a double-ended question here. One is that the case?
Right.
And second of all, what kind of vision do you have for the city that is different than, say, Day's vision?
I would say that I'm not a critic of Jake Day's vision because his vision was a part of the revitalization plan for Salisbury anyway, right? So that plan was put in place a few years back, and if a lot of people don't know, you can kind of look in the old Daily Times clippings, and they've had that plan. I want to say Ireton might have been in place or something of that nature when that plan came into place.
That's true.
Yeah. So it's something that's in place. So people that truly understand politics got to know there's a vision plan for the city that's already in place that you have to follow, right? So anything else is extra on the outside, right? So the community centers, the unity squares, these are the extra things that the mayor can add to the plan that's already in place. So I encourage people to study that plan because they haven't strayed away from that plan. People don't show up to city council meetings like they should, right? So you're not as informed. You're not getting those agendas. You don't know what's actually on the docket that they're speaking about at those times. So a lot of times we miss information. And when we miss that information, we don't get an opportunity to speak on what's already been planned, right? So they go forward, right? Once they make the vote, they move forward with it. So no, we have absolutely nothing against what Jake Day has done. We just saying now some of those things like not raising taxes over several years and things we're going to pay for now. That's the only thing that we would say negatively, right? He did a great job of growing the city, was very charismatic, did a great job of carrying us. We won several awards for environmental things and different things in our community. So Jake Day was a great leader. Nothing bad to say about him. We just feel like we could add more. Like we speak about Jake Day, we talk about downtown. You don't talk about our neighborhoods. You don't talk about the things that could grow in our communities. And that's where we come into play. We're not saying that we're coming in and we're going to stop the growth, the economical growth of Salisbury. No, that's not the game plan at all. What we're saying is that growth can continue, but we can also find ways that we're wasting money so that we can do more things in our community. Simple as roads. You can go down some roads in the city of Salisbury, you know they haven't been done 10 to 15 years. That's something that can be handled very easily instead of just coming out, putting something on it, patching it up. It's time to do some of our roads in our communities. It's time, just like we're doing the sidewalks. There's no need to do all of the sidewalks, and the roads are bad. So it's just adding those extra components to our community. As far as City of Salisbury, we're not trying to change anything. We're going to continue to grow. That's the purpose, that's the plan. But we got to bring some businesses, right? We got to partner with the county, bring some businesses, some jobs. You know, rent's going up. We got to start working with people to buy homes more, right? Better to have a mortgage than a rent. At least you know you got something in longevity. You got something that you're banking on. So we got to work with the programs that are in our community to do these things. And I think that's where we come into play, because we've already been working with them in the community. We've already built those relationships. We've been giving those resources and information to people in our community for over 10 to 15 years. So getting in that next position is just segueing and trying to show people how to work together, which we've already been doing.
So what is your assessment then of the downtown development plan? Lots of criticisms, issues about parking, for example. That's just one of many. What do you like the plan? Not like the plan? What's your position on it?
I feel like hearing some of the statistics. Let's start with the tax abatement, right? For some of the development. I get it. I understand you want developers to come, so you got to feed them a little something. 20 years is a long time, and that's what we've been hearing. 20 years is a long time. In that, it should have still been something where, okay, you have this tax abatement, but you have to donate to some nonprofits in the community during this time period. You have to do something for the youth in the community. There should have been something written in for the kids, something written in for the youth. Cool, you're going to develop downtown, we're going to give you these abatements, but you have to make a large donation towards something, whether it be the schools, whether it be to something. The development from the downtown, again, is good because it's going to help our university. Right, more kids will be able to come to this area, and we know that our university wants to grow as well. You know, the game plan for the University of Salisbury University is to grow. We know that with their athletic department, the way it's growing, the way it's seeing people, the influx from the kids, we know that's a part of the growth. So what we want to get people to understand is the job piece has to come, right? The more we were told 9 years ago that the way you develop an urban city is to develop the downtown first. They talked about Annapolis and other places that have these great downtowns, and we get it. They started doing the river walk, and they started doing all the amphitheater, all these great things. We still don't have the jobs here, though. You have to work with the county exec. You have to work with the county council. We have to bring back some factory jobs, some manufacturing jobs. The Amazon distribution center went to Seaford. That was the opportunity we could have had to come to the Salisbury area, Wycomico County. You still have Walmart distribution centers and other distribution centers. We have tons of land in this area. The job doesn't have to specifically come to Salisbury. Has to come to the area so Salisbury residents can have access to it, right? It's hard to have a kid, someone who works a great job like Amazon as a driver, but they got to drive to Seaford every day. That's going outside. That's taking us outside of now. They're spending money going to Seaford, so more than likely they're getting gas in Delaware, right? They're spending more money in Delaware than they are in this area. So we have to bring the jobs. The development's great. I don't mind the development, but we have to start creating jobs. And you are creating jobs during construction, but when construction is over, those jobs move on. Right? So it's like, if you don't continue to develop in the downtown area, do you continue to create jobs in that area? Not at all. What jobs have truly in the 9 years come to here? Again, nothing against Jake Day, nothing against any other administration. We've lost manufacturing companies in this time period. We could say a lot of the factories have been gone a long time ago. My grandfather worked at Campbell Soup. I had family members that worked at Wayne Dresser. You had Bayliner. You had factories where people were literally buying homes and buying land. We no longer have that. We may have a few in industrial park that are pharmaceutical companies, but we no longer have the factories and the large manufacturing companies that we used to have. We were thriving on that at one point in time. How do we get back to that? And that's the biggest piece. That's the biggest question. How can we work with the county council and the county exec and the city council? Work together. That's the other piece. It's been so long that we haven't had a great working relationship. No matter how good the city grew, no matter how much people think about the county, the working relationship was crazy. And you're still looking at some of that effect now, right? Like, especially on the county side of things.
So in terms, by the way, of underrepresented communities, we went to a series of single districts in order to get better representation. We now have the second, actually, African-American woman to become president of the city council. At least for the current regime, all the council members are now women. What hasn't been represented in the city, do you think, in those terms? I
would say if you look at the census, we have a large Korean, we have a large Haitian and Spanish population, not just African American. A lot of people think when you think of things or you talk about things in Salisbury, we always talk about black and white. Right? We would say that over the past few years, you can just look around. There's a very large Haitian, Spanish, and Korean population. A lot of people think when you think of things or you talk about things in Salisbury, we always talk about black and white. Right? We would say that over the past few years, you can see, you can just look around. There's a very large Haitian, and Creole speaking population, and there's a very large Spanish population. They need to be represented, right? They need to, again, we found out during COVID times, and we were working for the city at this time, for a very long time, our material that we would go around passing out door to door, or we would mail out, never had Creole or Spanish in it. So we're sending these documents out to our community with vital information, and we're forgetting to put language on the documentation. Now, if you look around, they're starting to trifold it. They're starting to put it in English, Spanish, Creole, and even some documents are put in Korean, because those populations are in our community heavily. I believe that we need to start hiring directors and workers who look like that reflect that, right? I think those people in those communities need to be encouraged and educated on how to run for council, how to run for board of education. Their children go to school here. So when we talk about true representation, that's what we mean. We mean, again, if a friend of yours who you know that's Spanish, you send downtown, you're going to feel comfortable enough that they're going to get taken care of. You send them to a department, you're going to feel comfortable enough that they're going to have someone who can take care of your friend. Not treat your friend like they're a foreigner. Not treat your friend like they got to speak English. If they don't speak English, they can't get services. That's not life. That shouldn't be the reflection of what Salisbury looks like, because that's not what it looks like.
Good. Because one things I think I hear you saying is that it's not just a matter of obviously representation of the city council, but how do you then change the people at the ground level who are dealing with the people that you're talking about, who are able to say converse in Spanish or Creole or what have you? I mean, because they have a lot of people who've been there for a long time, and obviously they have civil service protection, of course. I mean, how do you up that so that you can reach into the community at that ground level for those departments?
Yeah, I mean, I personally been watching, and we've been paying attention, especially since February, the amount of turnover that we've had in the city with jobs, right? So it's the hiring process, right? It's advertising these positions in those communities, right? Not saying get rid of people that you've already had there, right? Training is simple, right? We don't want people to go learn Spanish and Creole. That might take too much work. Rosetta Stone is amazing, don't get me wrong, but that might just take a little too much work. And I don't think it should be somebody's job who has been working in their position for 20 years to now have to go learn Spanish or Creole, right? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is something as simple as working with some SU students that may speak Creole, right? Getting some interns in there. That may be a way to fix things or work with it. Some Spanish interns. Working with the community who's already actively involved. With COVID, we built a lot of teams during COVID. Again, we worked for the city during COVID. There were a lot of sub-teams built, especially when it came to feeding, homelessness, medical attention, with these teams going around with vehicles now to give shots and so many things of that nature. They had to find a way to have Creole and Spanish people with them. They had to. So it's not like we were recreating something. It's already been done. Now we just have to implement it in other areas. COVID taught us how to recreate a lot of things that we didn't have in place. So it was a blessing and a curse, right? Lost a lot of people, lost a lot of lives, but it taught us in an emergency, we have to make sure we're affecting everyone in that community. And the only way is to have people who speak the same language, or to make sure that our documentation is saying the same thing to them.
This morning I read in the paper that the city is going to apologize for the 1931 lynching of Matthew Williams and others, obviously. We're not sure exactly what they're going to do in terms of recognition of the role of the firehouse and the fire chief with all of that. Do you think the city obviously should apologize? And what beyond apology, what else can the city do? I
think the apology is great, especially with you moving back in that building. People don't know the history. A lot of people don't know history around here. I'm a history buff. I love history. I know a lot about that story. The city apologizing says a lot, right? I don't know if there was any pressure from any other organization outside to make them apologize. Obviously, their grand ribbon cutting and opening happened weeks ago. So I don't know if it was a little bit of pressure, right, from someone to make them do this now. But stepping up and making the apology is great, right? Again, we don't know what was going on way back then. It isn't anyone's fault today of what happened. But at least standing up and apologizing is a great way to acknowledge something did happen that was wrong, and someone who was in a position of power at the time was involved. So standing up, they already have a marker down there in that area as well. I get what they're trying to do in Wycomico County to recognize some of these moments and these things that are going on. So big ups to the city for doing that. Did they have to? No, they didn't have to. But them doing that is a major step moving forward, speaking on the history of what did happen with that fire chief, what did happen, how his involvement was involved in that lynching. But I just feel like, at some point in time, we as a people have to sit down and talk history, right? We have to truly talk Eastern Shore history. We have all of these groups and people with these concerns, but there's no one who's really sitting down talking history and educating one another. Because the more you become educated, right, the more you know. The more knowledge you gain, the more power you gain, right? And that means our community can grow and heal. Healing is the biggest thing. We know a lot of the things that happened back then. There's a book called Round the Pond. My Miss Linda Dyer loved the book because that's where I got a lot of my history from, besides the ancestors and elders that I have in my community. But that book is amazing. I encourage people all the time just to go grab it from the library, and if you want some true history on the city of Salisbury, read that book, and it will give you so much history. And then everything else that unfolds from there, you can just Google, you can research. You can go to the Chipman Cultural Center and see some of that information. Even come here. There's tons of information. I can't remember what your center is called, the NAB Center or something?
Yeah, the NAB Center, right?
Yeah, the NAB Center has tons of information, from maps, how things changed, to tons of if you really want to study. So I just encourage people to learn more history about that and truly understand why people are asking for an apology even. So that's vital and important to understand what happened during that lynching and how it went down. So there's tons of information out there, and I just encourage people to, again, you've got access to internet at your fingertips nowadays. Google some more information so you can understand both sides of the story.
Because in talking to Monica Brooks, who's president of the local NAACP, obviously they wanted an apology and wanted that word used. But in addition, talking about this idea that there needs to be more to be done in terms of the situation with the African American community in particular, because lynching was simply a representation of the Jim Crow period, in which African Americans did not achieve the kind of economic or even political equality that they seek. Is there something else that the city can do beyond the apology?
I would say if they would like, if Monica would help organize, why not work together, right, in some sort of way to do informational sessions on a larger scale. That would be good, right? City has some places and some spaces that can be utilized. The NAACP obviously has some information that can be utilized. Start a partnership, work together and figure out how we can inform the African American community and others who would like to be informed on what was going on during these time periods and other incidences like that lynching that happened not only in the surrounding area but in Salisbury. I think that's the best way to move forward, right? Like, there's no need to put something in the city's lap and just say, hey, do something with it. Come up with creative ways, right? That's one of the biggest things we want to do. Come to us with your problems and issues. That's fine. We want to hear them. We want to listen to them. But also come with a way we can work forward, right? Don't just sit them in our lap and say, hey, here's the issue and problem. Do something with it. Nah. We want to hear your creative ways of how we can move forward together. How can we help you fix this? How can you help us fix this? So the NAACP, Ms. Monica Brooks, and the city need to come together in a creative way to figure out how to inform people and move forward. Let's have some information sessions throughout the year. Doesn't have to be every week. Doesn't have to be, could be bi-monthly even. At least you get some sessions in and you're doing something different. That's where the change comes into play.
I want to turn to public safety, because I know April Jackson, who's now the president, has said that that's one of her concerns.
Right.
And public safety, we had a mass shooting in July. 14-year-old boy was killed. Some 7 others were injured. Just recently, we had 3 Salisbury University students who were shot. What would you do about that? I mean, most people did not think that mass shootings would come to Salisbury, and yet here we are, at least with one.
Yeah. I know the tragedy all too well. I know the young man who was murdered. I know the young man who was murdered before at Peace City. Watched these young men grow up, play basketball. I've coached them before. Know the mothers. I know the families. Tragic about the students at SU. Very tragic. The questions that came to mind at first, what we would do is continue to work with the youth. I've been working with youth for a very long time, and what we do understand now, especially in today's time, is we do not control kids, right? But I would also say there's not a lot of activities in our city or in our community for kids, right? Think of a place like before. You had the mall, you had the arcade, you had different things in our city. You had Skateland, you had different things in the community that were open to kids, for kids to do, for kids to be around positive adults. That was the other piece, right? Not by themselves, not just out in the community, but monitored by positive adults. The shooting areas, things that happen in those areas. One, we need more lights in that area. That's a county thing. It's not much the city can do about that area. But those areas that are still dark in our counties need lighting, right? We need to find ways to make sure that lighting happens, because if someone public safety officer, the police officer shows up and they can't see what's going on, again, how do they truly handle the situation? Those areas need more lights. Period. That's what needs to happen. Two is, my second question would be, how are these children getting access to these guns? Right? They're not breaking in gun stores. I know no one is illegally as far as selling. So we truly believe that the opioid crisis is causing the gun crisis as well, right? If these kids are selling drugs to addicts and addicts has access to guns, they're selling guns now for drugs. We don't believe anybody's coming in with crates of weapons and dropping them in neighborhoods or things that may be happening in large cities. But how are these kids getting access to these high-powered weapons? Being able to put off so many shots. I think that's another thing that we really got to look into. Who's giving them access to these guns? Again, we don't hear about no places getting kicked in and guns being robbed from no gunsmiths and things of that nature. So I think that would be another major question. And then, how much work are we really putting in with the nonviolence and gun safety thing as far as teaching gun safety? Teaching kids how to hunt, putting kids in archery. These are programs that are already in our community, right? So when you're teaching gun safety, I think, again, you're educating people on how to handle things. You're educating people on the danger of things when you teach gun safety, right? And they have a little more respect for the weapon. Will this save everything? No, not at all. But these are some things that we can put in place and we can have it. There can be some gun clubs for youth. There can be some access to learning how to hunt earlier, right? And I think finally the thing would be on a city scale is working with we have ECI, you have local police, and working with some of those officers and people who are maybe being released. And I ain't saying have scared straight programs. I remember that program went out the window. They had that a long time ago.
Yep.
And again, I don't think that would work anyway, because nowadays most of those kids are going to visit, and this isn't a knock or anything, but they'll see their uncle, they'll see their father, they'll see a friend from the neighborhood. That's not going to scare them, right? That's just the reality, right? That program is not going to work for the kid that's from the neighborhood, because they're going to see a relative, they're going to see someone they know, and that's more going to be like, okay, I'll be cool in here, I'll be okay. We have to have those people who are coming home. We have to have those officers who have seen the tragic things that go on in prison. And we have to have more open seminars, visual seminars. Show them what could happen, right? Show them the people that are getting murdered or getting stabbed or getting cut. Show them the things that happen inside of these prisons. We've done seminars several years called the Prison and Gang Seminar, and we partnered with Captain Major Holmes and Captain King, who are two ECI people. And they have a wonderful program called Choices that they go about around showing the real thing that happens in prison. And we have to work together. I don't know if the city works with DJS and DJS works with the correctional system, and there has to be more of a unity on the conversation, because these kids are committing murder in our community. So now your biggest issue is your prisons are filling up with children, and these children can't be around the adults. So now you're being overpopulated with teenagers who are around real killers and real murderers, and it's a learning process, right? These kids don't have that much long in there because they're young. They're learning from and they come home better criminals. We don't have no good reentry programs. We don't have no great halfway homes in here where people can come home and get some programs and some services to reenter into our community. So now you're spearheading a larger problem. We have to continue to work with all agencies who are ready and willing to make sure that our kids understand what they're getting themselves into. Will you save every kid? No. We haven't been able to. You never will be able to. But you can change some minds and try to make some better decisions.
Let's also ask you about this shooting incident that you're also involved with. You pled, I guess, guilty and probation. What happened?
In the home, now I can talk about it. I couldn't talk about it before. Everybody wanted me to talk about it. I don't mind talking about it now that it's over. The judicial system is a great system. I had a right to a speedy trial. My trial has been over. In my home, preparing my gun at the time to go to the range. Actually, I was being safe. I'm preparing my weapon to go to the range. I actually don't have to prepare my weapon. I actually can carry my weapon. I have a permit to carry in Maryland. I've done everything the legal way. I've had tons of gun safety. I'm always with guns. I mean, it just was a freak accident, man. I'm unloading the weapon, and I don't know if a bullet had got stuck or how that happened, but it went off. I'm thinking that the bullet hit my dresser. So I'm going to call the police, but I don't have my license on me. I go get my license and come back. By that time, the police are there. I go straight to them. Hey, listen, it was me. They informed me that the bullet went through the ground. So I show him where I was, through the floor of my apartment. I show him where I was standing, how I was holding the gun, how I was taking it out of my safe, right? All of these things. And the angle on how I had the gun in my hand. So when they see the angle, it all added up. Like literally, I wasn't aiming down at the floor. I wasn't being reckless. So they tried to charge me with 3 counts of different reckless endangerment. And you know, I trusted the system. You had to prove that I was being reckless, right? Or was it an accident? So it came out that it was truly an accident. It accidentally went off. It was a freak accident with my gun. We went through the process of everything. I took a new gun safety course. I'm still a licensed gun holder. I believe in that amendment. I truly believe. I just believe you teach people how to use weaponry safe. Right? I truly believe. I had a friend growing up. His family always had weapons. They always hunted, right? And that my greatest experience was going hunting with them in the summertime. I look forward to that. That and fishing was what I did with them. I was a Boy Scout, so I learned camping and things through his father, actually. He was my cousin. But me learning gun safety has always sparked my interest in guns. I never wanted to go out and kill anyone. Never had the interest of harming people. But learning the sport of hunting, being able to know how to hold a weapon when people are around and different things of that nature, how to keep the safety on, the gear that you're supposed to wear over your ears and so on and so forth. Learning those things kept my interest. So I made sure I stayed out of trouble. And when I was able to move forward and get my own weapon in America, as everyone can if you're not in trouble, I made sure I obeyed the laws, and I did that. This accident happened, and it made me seem like a monster. I didn't check on this lady or anything. But funny part was, no officer was Creole. This was a Haitian lady, right? Again, language barrier. Who spoke Creole that came and really spoke to this lady? That was one issue for me. Then the other issue again was, when a crime has happened, can the defendant go in the crime scene? Everybody was like, oh, you didn't go check on her after it happened, blah, blah, blah. The crime happened. The police are in her home. I can't just go in her home now. That's almost like tampering with evidence, right? So that was another reason why that was just blown out of proportion. Of course I checked on this lady, made sure she was all right. Right? I couldn't do it at that very moment when the police officers were there, but we did do that. So that was the situation. I went to court. My lawyer, we talked. They were pressing the issue of reckless endangerment at first, and then, like I said, talking about it, the judge speaking on it, the things that I was willing to do, we took care of it. And it was an accidental discharge, which is something that anytime a gun goes off in the city limits, you're gonna get some sort of discharge because that's a city ordinance, right? That's illegal for a gun to go off in the city of Salisbury.
I want to turn to something else, housing, because one of the things that has been touted, certainly the downtown area, is going to create more housing, but of course lots of these are going to be pretty expensive, to say the least. What do you do about housing in the city? How do you encourage it?
So that was something that we addressed not too long ago, because it was a statement that was made by an organization that, with someone new in a department as a head, that they could do something about. The city of Salisbury can actually do nothing. Right? Let's be honest and candid here. So for people to get on a platform and say that they can, they would be lying. The city of Salisbury can only work with the county exec and work with the county council to push legislation towards across, because then and only then can things be capped. Maryland real estate agents and landlords go by a universal, which is a Maryland rate. That's why our rates on the shore went up, because the rates in PG County went up and Montgomery County went up, and they were able to hike our rates up as well. What we didn't understand and what hasn't been put into place mindset-wise is the money we make with our jobs, right? They make so much more money across there, so hiking it up on them, okay, we understand. But hiking it up in Salisbury and someone paying $1,500 for a 2-bedroom, that's kind of outrageous, right? So we would have to work, the city of Salisbury would have to work, again, in partnership with our county council, because the city of Salisbury is in Wicomico County. That would be a county thing, right? So everybody gets up in an uproar and comes to the city, and we get it. We can hold landlords accountable for codes. We can hold them accountable for the things that they're not doing that they're supposed to be doing. But it's absolutely nothing that people in the city of Salisbury can do. Administration, mayor, or anyone can truly do about landlords raising their rent prices. That's a county thing. That's a thing that we would have to work hand in hand with them to take legislation across the bridge to try to get things capped off. If a family makes only a certain amount of money, they should only have to pay a certain amount of rent. That's a legislation thing. It really can't happen through city ordinances and things of that nature. But I would be willing to work. Again, I would be willing to sit down and come up with plans and talk and discuss whatever that looks like. But I really think we need to hear more from the people about it, right? We need to truly hear from the people, because if landlords did a rent hike in a small amount of time, but they added no amenities to the home, I think that's a problem. That's something I believe we can now come in and we can talk about codes, right? Have you changed the toilet in 7 years? Have you changed the windows to the new access windows? Have you done the things that you're supposed to do? Have you changed the siding on this home and over certain, holding them accountable to code? I think that is truly the only thing that we can do if people are starting to raise the rent hikes, especially for the slumlords. I think there's a lot of slumlords out there. I think we really need to crack down on them.
Do you think, by the way, finally, that there's anything the city can do in terms of getting more housing built?
Yes, I do. Developers, and this is the kicker for me, right? And then we'll say single-family homes. Worcester County, Berlin has a single-family home development, right? Beautiful development. I won't say name, but I'll say it's a beautiful development. Mm-hmm. The same developer did homes in Salisbury. The homes in Salisbury were more townhouses and apartment high-rises and things. Well, the homes in Berlin were more of a dead-end street with single-family homes. I truly feel like we need to get out of the high-rises mindset, and we need to help these single families with some single-family homes. You feel so much better about yourself. You have more pride in yourself when you go to a home compared to going to a large apartment complex packed and jammed with people. I feel like with these developers, we just need to ask those questions. Again, there's tons of land in Wycomico County. Like, I know we're building and we're growing, but if you look around and you see around, there's still tons of land where we could do other projects. So it's just got to get with developers and truly put in some different mindsets when it comes to developing, not just downtown. Not just downtown, man. It's one of those things where people deserve good living, affordable living. It's something that we truly have to fight for. And we have to work together with the county council and the county exec to move forward with it.
Well, we've been speaking with Jermichael Mitchell, a candidate for mayor in Salisbury, and we appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. There you go. Delmarva Today with Don Rush.